Two Daves, no waiting, huh?
Okay.
The hell's up with that? You're good, famous. Aloha, it's Dave Lawrence. How you doing? I hope you're doing well. Thank you so much for catching this. I am sitting in the Blaisdell Arena for another time this year, and this time with a very special guest who I've never had even the pleasure of meeting. We talked on the phone the other day. Dave Mason, legendary musician. Aloha, mahalo, brother.
Yes, how are you? It's good to be here.
It's great to have you here, man. And before we get into some of your rock history stuff, I guess it's related to it, what's your history with the islands? And sort of take me back through your experiences with Hawaii.
Well, I've played here on and off in different places. Mostly in the 70s. I remember mostly I remember actually the tennis club on Maui.
Oh, yeah, right, in Lahaina.
Lahaina, yeah. It was an outdoor place. Right. And it was, I remember that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly the places I played over here in Honolulu.
So overall, your first experiences here were all playing live. You never came on vacation first or something like that?
No. They were all working, first of all, back in the 70s, early 70s.
Anything stick out, a distinctive memory of having gigged here? Maybe a local musician, a certain performance?
No. I mean,
It's okay if no memory comes to mind.
For the early times I was here, I was mostly here just working, and didn't really have a lot of time to spend to hang out, frankly. So it was mostly during when I was touring a lot, and then over the years I've been back, stayed, hung out. Mostly, I have to admit, I'm mostly Maui.
Is that your favorite place in Hawaii?
Probably so. I think so. Kauai, I went to a couple of times. When I actually visited Graham Nash a couple of times over there.
We have a great community of people who live on the islands. We got Graham over there. We got Todd Rundgren on that island.
Yeah, I guess I'm sure there are a few people who live scattered around.
Yeah, Maui has the highest percentage, but there are a few. There are a few over there on Kauai, and you named one of the big ones. So you're tight with Graham.
Oh, Graham! I've known Graham since he was in the Hollies.
You have a really long history, and let's get into a little bit of your history. What led to the Traffic gig, and what experiences from that chapter of your life do you think you cherish the most, or maybe have formed who you are as a guy?
Well, Traffic, basically, we met in, Jim and I played in Jim Capote and I played in local bands. And then when we kind of met them up in Birmingham, which is about 25 miles from Worcester in England, which is where I'm from. And slowly kind of, there was a club, there was like a late night after hours club up there in Birmingham. And that's where we met, I think it was where we met Steve. And we just all mostly became just guys just hung out together. And then slowly after about a year or two, and Steve had become sort of, I think, bored or frustrated or whatever with the Spencer Davis group. And they had a number of hits. In fact, I sang on 3 of them. Sang harmony on Somebody Help Me, and then Traffic was pretty much the background vocals on Give Me Some Lovin' and I'm a Man.
There was a real difference that he was looking for then, I'm getting, from coming from Spencer Davis and this group. Was there like a mission in terms of like jam potential, if you will, or improvisational aspect? What was it that was sort of the driving force in that Traffic sound?
Oh, you mean for Steve, or you mean the band itself?
And when you guys coalesced after Spencer Davis, it was such a different sound, as you point out, from where he had been to where he was going. So.
Yeah, well, we were all from, mine was, Jim and I had to sort of, although even when Jim and I had bands together, we were pretty eclectic in some of them. I mean, we were doing stuff from Oscar Brown Jr. and to Martha and the Vandellas, to the Beatles, to... It was a pretty wide range of stuff, and Steve, of course, was more attuned with blues and gospel. Chris was more jazz, more avant-garde jazz. He was actually from art school, so it was a pretty eclectic group of people, which I guess in the end is kind of what split it apart. And then, for the most part, when we started, I took that as an opportunity to start writing.
That eclecticism, though, is almost a great description of the sound of that band, if you will, all the different things that the people...
Yeah, I kind of classified Traffic as like one of the first alternate bands.
And that's what I meant. It had so many different motifs, sort of.
Yeah, which I thought was its strength, but that just sort of broke it up in the end. And a lot of my, like I said, the first song I ever wrote, "Hole in My Shoe," which was their biggest hit over there, at that point, went to number 2 in England. But it was kind of, I was 18 anyway at the time, and I really, there wasn't much experience there behind it. So my early stuff was pretty, it was like "Hole in My Shoe." So, and then Traffic, it got successful. I was so young and I couldn't really deal with it, so I left after the first album. And that was mostly just because I couldn't really deal with it. And during that period, I worked on producing an album for a group called Family, Music in a Doll's House. I became friendly with Hendrix and worked with him on some things, which finished up on Electric Ladyland. And then and during that time, I had gone off on my own, and actually in Greece. And I had written some songs, and one of them was "Feeling All Right." And they were doing their second album, and they only had 5 songs and 5 tracks cut. And I said, well, I got 5 songs, So it was like, oh, well, cool. Well, so we did the second album. But the problem was, I think what happened was the problem became a rift in there with Steve, because, not from my point of view, but it just, my stuff kept being picked for singles. So...
and that caused...
I don't know what it caused, but it caused enough for it to... It's enough.
And what an enduring song that one has become, and it's maybe other Cats' versions of it, but it's such a huge song.
Yeah, there's like 48 different versions of it, bands, and then it never stops going into movies or commercials. So yeah, 2-chord songs lasted a long time.
Kind of like Paranoid, for Sabbath. When you mentioned him, it's a great story that you've got, the Jimi Hendrix story, a unique connection to him through Watchtower. Explain.
I just met him one night in some club, and we started talking, and he liked Traffic, and of course I loved what he was doing. We just kind of started talking, and that's how and I started hanging out, going to the studio, and at one point I was going to actually join on bass, because there was some rift going on with Noel Redding, and do some producing with him, but it never happened. Other than, as far as we got, was Watchtower on Electric Ladyland and singing on Crosstown Traffic.
But it was you, wasn't it you, who introduced him to Dylan's cover of that?
No, we were at somebody's apartment one afternoon, and they had a copy of John Wesley Harding.
Oh, but you were there when he was hearing it or something, right?
We were both there. We both went by somebody's, I forget who it was.
How amazing, though, because then he took that tune, and much like covering, as we were just talking about with your song, he put his indelible stamp on it.
Yep. Yeah, and then I guess, I don't know why, I forget how much period of time went by before we went in the studio and did it and recorded it.
Your thing with the Stones, Jimmy Miller brought you to that.
Well, the same thing with with Hendrix. There were just there weren't that many studios, and everybody finished up in London, so you invariably run into people, and there weren't that many engineers going around. So and Jimmy Miller was producing Traffic and producing the Rolling Stones, and oh God, his name escapes me. Anyway, it was the same engineer, same studios, so people would invariably drop by each other's sessions. And I knew Brian Jones pretty well.
Was that your in-band contact besides Jimmy then, that Brian was the other contact that you were tightest with in the Stones?
Well, just we would spend, you know, we'd just hang. We'd see each other occasionally, you know, at sessions or a big. There was an Indian restaurant that a lot of us used to go to called the Tandoori. I think it was on Fulham Road or Kings Road. And then there was another Moroccan place that a lot of us would go to.